Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Mark Townsend. I'm a senior consultant with Logic 2020. And today I'm going to spend roughly 25 to 30 minutes talking with you all about how to create more compelling, influential, and persuasive PowerPoint content. This will be part of a series we're going to be bringing you. This one is focused on PowerPoint. Quickly, just to give you a little bit of background on Logic 2020, we are a Seattle-based business and technology consulting firm. Our clients range nationwide from startups to the Fortune 100 into state and local government. We've also had a fairly long-standing relationship with Microsoft across various parts of the organization. We have a belief that many corporate customer initiatives are made too complicated for the problem they are trying to solve. Our differentiator is our focus on clarity to drive simple and efficient customer outcomes. That segues nicely into what we're about to share. As our goal today is going to be about simple and efficient ways to deliver more compelling PowerPoint content. Just to quickly run through our agenda for the day. We're going to start by discussing slide titles and how that can increase comprehension. Then we will look at visual organization on your slides and how to do that more effectively. Then we'll look at how to improve charts and graphs. We'll look at an example of how to bring these three concepts together into one slide. We'll discuss a few resources as well. At this time, I would also like to invite you to submit any questions you have into the chat window. I'm being joined by Rebecca Lustig-Jaeger, another senior consultant here at Logic, and she will be able to address those questions as we go. This time, go ahead and segue into slide titles, the most important part of your slide and the biggest opportunity to initially grab the attention of your audience. We want to start this and just make it very clear. The title is the launching pad for determining slide content, layout, and design for you as the creator. And so it's key to use a clear and strong title to ensure that your slide is going to be coherent and understandable. Key to doing that, using a full sentence title. Why a full sentence? This is your opportunity to convey to your reader or audience what you are trying to say on your slide. The answer to that very question, what are you trying to say on your slide? That can actually be used as your slide title. You want to do something clear that's going to ensure your main message is highlighted. It's going to lead to saving time for you and for the reader on those very many occasions where a slide is going to be skimmed and not fully consumed. This is your opportunity to land the points you want to make. And this is all about establishing an effective story arc. It's going to be a lot easier to do that as we look at a couple examples here. So this is going to be an example, and what we see here is fairly commonplace in terms of a single word slide title. All we are essentially doing here is establishing what the slide is about. We're not actually pointing out anything or any conclusions or points we're trying to make. It's a slide about water. We've got a few bullets about text that are, fairly data heavy here, along with a compelling map. Let's look at something that can change how this slide is presented. So in this next version of the slide, what we actually see is we've used a full sentence title to convey one primary point. Nearly 97% of the world's water is salty or otherwise undrinkable. If you look at the slide itself, there's significantly less text. There's really just a couple things in there along with a picture. However, now, instead of a rather nebulous slide title, we've actually established something up front to convey an actual data point to our reader. So now here's a question, take you all through science class. What percentage of Earth's water is salty or undrinkable? The two preceding slides were shown to a real high school class. Slide 1, recall was about 69%. Slide 2, 79% recall. May not seem like a whole lot, but that's the difference in a class-wide average between a D+ and a C+, using some real data there. Now, if we look at the two slides side by side, there's clearly more information provided in the first slide. But note the title. What do you really want your audience to know or recall? A strong or informative title can make a weaker slide stronger. And again, this is about recall. This isn't about slide design. This is about landing the points you want to. This is key. A few high-level takeaways from this section. If you really want to increase your influence on either a fully or partially engaged group of stakeholders, here's a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to your title. What does the audience need to understand? Make the answer to this question your title. Additionally, a strong and informative title can actually make an otherwise incoherent slide understandable. It's going to make up for weak content if you can establish a firm title that's going to. And again, at the end of the day, you want to help your reader save their time, make skimming okay, while ensuring that they're still going to get the main message you're trying to land. At the end of the day, you don't want their eyes or their minds working too hard to grasp whatever concepts it is that you're trying to push forward. This will be a recurring theme as we continue to walk through the presentation. Next, we're going to look at a couple very easy tricks about how to organize content on a slide when we have a lot of content. Visual organization. First, let's pause to just consider how we visually organize information. Anything your eyes can see as part of a group or separate from other groups is typically going to be considered one piece of info. Now, how much is too much? Studies show that most people can only receive and retain 3 to 4 groups of information at a time and still be able to comprehend. Once you exceed that number, a reader starts risking ability to recall or retain information that they're presented. So you want to ensure that you're keeping things straightforward and simple and not overwhelming your audience with too much content or data. So the key is to group your data in a way they're going to be able to remember. Here's a simple way to think about how our brain organizes units of information. It's really 4 different buckets to consider that we're going to look at in terms of ways to leverage on our slides. First, the law of proximity. Essentially, objects that are closer together are often going to be seen as part of the same group. They're separated by more white space, they're going to be part of something else. There's the law of similarity. Objects that share common characteristics, be it color or shape, are part of the same group. The law of connection or connectedness. Objects that are connected by lines are going to be part of the same group. Then you have the law of enclosure. Objects that are enclosed within a common border are going to be part of the same group. There are fairly straightforward ways to apply this in slides, so let's look at a few examples of that. So in this first one, we're looking at the number of personas that access a website. However, even if this example says personas, I'm sure you can relate this slide with products, segments, organization structure. We've all experienced data overload on slides here at Microsoft because there's a lot of information to convey. Here, if we were going by our laws of grouping and trying to get to 3 or 4, right now we're essentially looking at 8 different buckets or personas, if you will. So let's look at a very simple way of grouping this information to make it a little bit easier for the reader and not quite as overwhelming. So here, an after version of this, we've essentially applied one of the main laws that we looked like around visual organization by using borders. And now we've basically taken the 8 groups that we had, bucketed them into 2 by segmenting our personas into singles and married groups. Doesn't look like much, but this actually makes it much easier for our reader to discern information on the slide. And again, let's try to increase our retention and their ability to comprehend the points we're trying to make. Let's look at some additional examples of this concept. Here's a fairly generic flow, journey type slide. Look at it, browsing online until finally making an order. The law of connectedness is being used here as we can see these areas directing the reader through the process or flow. However, we're still having to sort of work bit by bit here, and if we were going to count our visual groups, we're looking at 6 different ones. It does take some time for a reader to push through this. Not only that, but we've got a fairly nebulous slide title we're dealing at. All they're telling us is this is a customer journey, not what we're supposed to know about it. So let's see what we can do to maybe make this a little bit better using some of the applications we discussed. So in this version, we've done a couple little things. We added some simple graphics. We've also changed the slide title. Now we know what the message is that the creator is trying to push across. Additionally, we've added some boxes with some colors and labels, demand gen, registration, and purchasing. Let's just quickly look at both of these side by side. So here you see on the left, we've got 6 information groups standing relatively individually. What we've done using some colors and borders and additional labels is actually broken that down to 3 groups. Again, trying to maintain that 3 to 4 groups of information on a slide to maximize the amount of reader retention. So we've actually just used some of those same laws we looked at. In this case, think about laws of similarity and laws of enclosure using some color and border. Again, nothing revolutionary, just a simple way to increase recall on the slides. In terms of a few key takeaways, I just want to ensure you grasp from this section. Again, at the end of the day, let's try to limit our slides to 3 to 4 groups of information to maximize the amount of reader recall that they're available to handle. This does not necessarily mean you actually have to surrender or limit the amount of content you want to include. It just means we need to think about some creative ways to group that content. Again, proximity, similarity, be it colors or shapes, connecting, using borders to enclose. This is just about increasing the reader's ability to understand and pull out the key points you're trying to make. We haven't touched on all the ways you can actually organize your information here in this section, just for purposes of time constraints, and tried to just introduce some very simple concepts. But obviously happy to have further discussions with you on this should you desire. Next, we're going into charts and graphs, close to all of our hearts. Data is king these days. I'm sure we all either are exposed to charts and graphs being used to present a message or conclusion to an audience, or we do it ourselves. Data-driven decisions are about the strongest ones that business decision makers will use. So it's key, and it's always good to remember that when we're talking about PowerPoint, presenting data, This can go a couple different ways. If we're fortunate, we're going to be presenting data in person. But sometimes that means there's a lot of info to convey. Other times, obviously, someone's going to be receiving or consuming the information when you're not around, which means you're not going to be around to tell them what to look at. So what we want to ensure in this section is to show you how to effectively pull out the key information or data that you want to ensure your reader or audience knows, whether you're around to deliver that or not. And that means creating simple and compelling views of your data, chart or a graph. Let's take a look at two slides side by side. Consider this slide on the left. What do we think the main point of this slide is? It's a little difficult to say. There's a lot of information here, but it has not been designed in a way that's going to communicate a clear message. There's not necessarily a focus or a story here. It's one of those things where the old proverb comes to mind. If everything is important, then nothing is really important. Conversely, on the right, the point of the slide has been established right up front in the slide title. We are clearly being asked to focus on automotive, government, telecom. This is just using the title tip, but that now establishes the point up top, and then the data on the graph is visually reinforced through a couple common. Think of it in terms of wallpaper in a picture. Wallpaper is the background information. Yes, it's important in its own right as it provides context, but it's not the main point. Picture is. When working on charts, first you need to determine what is the picture for your main point and what is the wallpaper. This section talk about how to create a story within the chart using tricks like location, color, and size to pull out the picture or the key information that you want your reader to understand from the background data that you're presenting to them. What this will do is ensure the readers are paying attention to the data you want them to pay attention to, rather than asking questions or zeroing in on parts that are meant to be. I'm sure we've all been there before. So here's a few before and after examples too. I'm sure we've all seen one like this before. What is your first reaction going to be? There's a lot going on here. I'm not entirely sure what the point is. All I'm being told is this is about a customer survey on software considerations. And I'm going to basically go on a visual journey to then look at every single one of these columns, figure out what the topic is, what the number is, back and forth, up and down. There's not really a story here, and there's not really a place for me to focus. We're asking the reader to pull the information out of the chart with very little guidance. And the trick with this is when we do that, we run a risk that they're going to draw a different conclusion than the one we want them to. When this happens, we're losing our ability to persuade, and we're leaving things in the hand where all of a sudden, maybe we aren't telling a story anymore, or maybe a conclusion being drawn is not what we want. So what could we do a little differently on here? Here's the exact same data presented slightly differently, but to much stronger effect. First things first, we are establishing in our slide title what we want to know. Customers are most interested in user interface, brand name, and cost. Then we actually pull that picture out from the wallpaper of the chart using color, put a size, and some bold text. Additionally, established the three pieces of information right up front so that the eyes of the reader are directly towards what we want them to see and understand first on the chart. We are drawing conclusions for them, supporting that with what we're visually depicting. Doing so in both the title and in the graph itself. We've brought the meat of the slide to the forefront rather than letting it blend in with the rest of the data. Additionally, as you can probably see, we've moved from a column chart to a bar chart. This is really done for a couple reasons. First, typical reader's eyes are going to move from the top left corner to the right and then down. So this puts the focus on the most important facts that we want them to see, the top 3 features. This also helps with the length of the column names. Bar charts are going to provide a little bit more room for longer names. Let's take a quick look at the side-by-side. So again, as you can see on the left, vanilla slide title, lots of data to consume, unsure where to go. On the right, made things much clearer, and now we're guiding our reader on a journey. We're telling a story, and that's the key. We want to tell a story. We want to present a point or a conclusion. This is much more persuasive and compelling. Let's look at an additional example. So here's another doozy. You've probably all seen one like this or maybe even made one before. Again, we're really putting a lot of responsibility on the audience to pull the story and info out of the chart. We've got another real ambiguous title, and we're asking them to not only consume each line of the chart, but also look on our corresponding legend to figure out what they're actually looking at. What is the story here? What should they focus on? Again, very unclear. And the harder a reader has to work on this, the more time they're working and thinking and trying to process, rather than being given points, story that we want them to learn. There's a few very minor tweaks to help pull that very story out. Again, pull the picture out. We use size. And now we've actually added a circle as well as some text to ensure that our reader's eyes are going to go right to this specific spot that we want to focus on. We've highlighted the segment of the chart that we want them to pay attention to. The text joins the circle at the optical center of the slide. Now the message is readily available for the. Additionally, we provided a clear and informative slide title that establishes up front what we want the reader to glean from the chart. Now they don't have to labor over the slide to pull the key info out. Again, we do not want them to work hard. We want to make it easy for our audience to get the info that we want them to get. Here's your side-by-side, and again, this is just about subtle changes. It's about pulling the main information or picture out from the rest of the chart or graph. You want to tell a story, and you do not want your reader to have to try and pull the key info themselves. If you do that, you run the risk of them drawing a different conclusion than the one you want, and you lose your ability to influence or persuade them. Have a story and have a focus, and do not make your reader work too hard. Again, just to reiterate some of those key takeaways, we always want to make it easy on the reader. We also want to tell a story. So how do you pull your story out from the context? Present a story. Don't just present information. Use color and size to identify your story and effectively communicate the desired conclusion that you want your data to represent. We're going to move on, but what I will do is just give a quick tease here that in terms of data visualization, we will have an upcoming webinar with Nick Kelly, who's our Director of Analytics, that's going to go deeply into not only how to visualize data effectively, but also the best types of charts and graphs to use for your data. So there's going to be a lot of great info upcoming on that as well. Finally, let's just look at a before and after example slide where we're going to bring all 3 of these principles together for you. Here's your before, and it's a good one. It's like we've got a organizational transformation or org structure slide here. Quite a reorg it looks like. There's a lot happening here. First off, if we just sort of go top to bottom and think about some of the principles here. Team structure for our slide title. Doesn't tell me a lot about it, it just tells me what it is. So I'm already working a little too hard as a reader to wade into the content here. Looks like we're trying to convey to a large audience who does what and how a team is structured, not to mention what the team as a whole's mission is and their support responsibility. If I'm thinking about visual organization and information groups, we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, is this 3, 4, 5? Got a lot of borders, maybe too many borders. This is very dense. There's a lot to get through. I'm not even sure where to start or what the key point is or what we're really trying to surface. So if we think about some of what we've learned, let's see how we can maybe pull this info together into what we really want to land with our audience using these principles. So here's a cleaner version of a lot of the same information we just looked at. First off, starting top to bottom, we've used a full sentence title. What do we want the reader to know? Well, this is about how a group is structured. That's now spelled out right in the title. Additionally, in terms of grouping information, we consolidated what could generously be counted as between 6 to 8 groups of information into 2, using color and really just that law of similarity. Also pulled the picture out from the wallpaper. In this slide, we've actually eliminated a lot of content from the first slide that wasn't actually critical to what we wanted the audience to do. We're presenting less content here, but it's more targeted. There's a couple of nuances to the org that actually we didn't even see necessarily in the first version of the slide. Take a quick look side by side. So if we actually look here, we see that Jill Crystal holds 2 roles, and the central regional lead position is open. It's fairly easy to see on the after slide. It's info the reader would have to dig a bit for in the version. It's surfaced in position in a way that is upfront and obvious. The potential takeaway to the after slide would be that the Strategic Analytics Business Group needs additional headcount. Just some tweaks, even showing less on a slide, can actually make it more persuasive and compelling if it's presented the right way. To wrap up, we just wanted to share a few resources and provide you with some additional contact information should you want to follow the conclusion. In terms of training opportunities, for PowerPoint itself, we are firm proponents in the teachings of Bruce Gabriel, who does Speaking PowerPoint. He has tremendous content and guidance around additional in-person trainings on this very subject. For on-site data visualizations, I had previously mentioned Nick Kelly, and he does also offer person on-site seminars and trainings. You can find that at the links mentioned. In terms of Microsoft specific resources, there's plenty of style guides as well as Book Central, which many you can also leverage free icon libraries, which are great for using on your slides. And Speaking PowerPoint has some for free as well as some at the Noun project. We'd certainly love to hear from you. Here you have myself, Becca, as well as Eric Nelson, who's our Microsoft account lead. Should you want to follow up or have any questions or comments, we would certainly be happy to hear those. We've got our emails and phone numbers available. As I previously mentioned, there is going to be an upcoming webinar on using data to persuade. That will be coming up on Tuesday, February 9th, hosted by Nick Kelly, who's our Director of Visual Analytics. And it's got some really great stuff in it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be all about telling a story with your data and how to use that to. Nick's done some tremendous work, and a valuable session. We would encourage you to register if you have. I'd like to conclude today by just thanking all of you for taking the time to join. Certainly hope this has been beneficial and helpful. Will additionally be a nurture article available going into some of these same concepts I've shared. Thank you again for your time today. Certainly hope it's beneficial and wish you a great rest of your day and end of the week. Thanks very much.